Hi, my name is Edith Sampa Chiliboy. I'm a contemporary Zambian photographer who paints, not who paints. I would like to say I paint with light, but recently I discovered my images are more poetic. So I do poetry without words. And over the years, my photographic experience has taken me into spaces that I really enjoyed. For instance, one of the biggest achievements I think I have made was to be part of the Chaminuka collection, the first ever photographs to be collected by the Chaminuka collection. Anybody in Zambia who's in the art scene knows that that's the largest Zambian art photography collection, and for my photographs to be hanging in their gallery spaces on their wall sort of makes me feel proud. I feel like I have paved the way for many other young photographers to realize that photography is an art form that you can use to express yourself. Besides that, I have done various projects as well with the Women's History Museum. That was Fabricated Stories as well as Fractured. So in that we were deconstructing history in a way and trying to retell stories of artifacts that are not in our local museums, but bringing them to life in ways that we understand, and also reconnecting to a history that is lost. So the artifacts were from the Swedish Museum, and we had to interact with them virtually, but finding the connection between the artifacts from our ancestors before time and before colonialism, and having them in the now and realizing there's still so much significance and the role they play in our current environment was something that I really enjoyed. And then when it came to Fractures, it was a continuation of Fabricated Stories, but trying to cut the gaps and filling in the missing pieces of those stories that were told by our ancestors, and trying to reframe them in a way that people could actually understand, which I really enjoyed as well. Besides that, I think the highest of my peak was being awarded a combined fellowship with Dr. Kirsten Hacker as well as Patrick Chills Chilaisha by the University of Free State Berlin under Affects and Colonialism Web Lab. So what we did was sort of find a particular story that related to our history as Zambians, and brought it to life via photography, which made me realize that photography can be used to recreate images that have probably been missing from history for a long time, and bringing that to life and reigniting the fire for history and storytelling and understanding who I am and who we are as a people, which is really important, because if you don't know who you are, then how can you actually work? How can you be a useful person? That, for me, is a major achievement. Photography for me is now poetry without words. So I select elements and put them in my subject that are meaningful to my current subject. And also I'm inspired by lights and shadows, especially when it comes to my self-portraits or portraits of the people around me. I find it intriguing that I get to create more of a sculpture using a person, using the elements that they have around them. I think that's my favorite type of photography. And when I speak of the photography I did in Kalingalinga, I met this amazing, talented person called Chola. He runs a community art project called Manj Arts Community Project. And how he started was, he started in his own space, in his own room, but then the room was so small. He lived in a one-roomed house. It was so small that he really couldn't paint from the inside. So half the time he would paint it on the outside of his house, and people would get inspired by that. So the first time I came across this craft shop, I was amazed, because it was this little heaven that popped out of nowhere in Kalingalinga, especially that I used to pass by. And then one day here I was driving by and I was like, what is this place? What goes on here? So now I got a chance to actually speak to him and get to understand what he's all about. So he teaches not photography, he teaches his art to children as well as anybody who like to learn in the community. And he has people that come in and help him with the designs. He does the designs and then he teaches it out to everybody else, and they get to sell their work in this beautiful space. And in his art space, where he actually does his painting and his conceptualization, is the space where I thought I'd focus more to do portraits of him in his favorite mask. So he made that mask, and it's the mask he likes the most. So I thought it was a nice element to add in front of his one of unfinished paintings of this colorful woman. It was exciting. That's all I can say. He's so much of a kindred spirit that I felt connected to him in the fact that he made something out of nothing, in a way, using his hands, and just by meditating, being in his space, embracing who he is. And that sort of reminded me of who I am, because I like to sit down and contemplate until I come up with concepts or process my emotions and thoughts. And he does something similar, so I thought capturing the moment in his space was worthwhile for me. The one thing I still remember when it comes to my photography is this picture in a magazine of a little girl, and she had frozen waters around her. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. How do these people do it? I would one day love to do it. I never recognized it until some years back. That's when I think it actually sat down in me, and I realized that is when my love for photography started. And then moving along forward, my older cousin was a photographer, and he did events and family events, as well as the photographs of our family would be taken by him. And most recently, I discovered my grandfather was a photographer, and he shot his own wedding. So every single time I'm putting down these pieces, I realize it's hard for me to trace one point where I can say I really started photography. Besides me taking pictures of sunsets in the streets, of beautiful flowers, because I love flowers, wildflowers to be specific, and the sunsets to be specific during the rainy season along the road. Those were my favorite. The Stories of Kalingalinga workshop has actually reminded me that photography is an amazing adventure. There is always so much to shoot, and sometimes you can get lost in the maze. But one thing I have learned is to slow down and be a turtle sometimes. Your creative process might take time, but the moment you slow down and observe and reflect upon your work, it enhances the thought process when it comes to creating the images that you want to create. And the one thing I have taken away that I would want to recreate, that I've embraced a little more, is I could mention Alexander's abstract images. I like how he sort of got different textures from Kalingalinga and brought them together. And now I'm actually thinking of ways I can incorporate textures in my subjects' photographs besides just the elements they have, because textures sort of remind me of the skin, of the environment, and that way it sort of connects to who I am. I think for me, the only thing that I find quite difficult is bringing in equipment into Zambia. That's one main thing that I find really difficult to do. I know I have adjusted to using the equipment I have only available to me, but it can also be costly. So if there was a way that we could have incentives on having the importation of photographic equipment, that would really help. And not only that, yes, we do have Open Window University as a photographic institution, but maybe if we could just have a section of a photographic association that actually recognizes photographers in all forms, and just spreading the word of photography as an art around, that would literally help more than anything.